Ladies and gentlemen, Fourth and Trollers, welcome back to Fourth and Troll Fantasy, the most entertaining fantasy football podcast on the planet. I'm Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And we have got a show for you guys today. Last week, we tackled the top 10 running backs of fantasy football in 2023. This week, the top 10 wide receivers of 2023. It's going to be a fun week. I'm hyped. Wes, you hyped?
I'm elated. So excited for this episode.
I'm so excited. Fun fact, real quick, we have not looked at each other's lists. So we do not know who each other has
Fresh
here in the
reactions.
top 10. Some normal fantasy analysts may have the same people. You never know what you're going to get on Fourth and Troll Fantasy. It's a callback to last episode, actually. The top 10 running backs is like a box of chocolates.
I already forgot about
it. Me too. Until right now. You never know what you're going to get. There you go. We love Tom Hanks. Listen, we've got a great show. Like we said, be sure to check us out on our social media here that is posted below. We're going to post our rankings on there as well. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, all that sorts of fun stuff. Comment who are you inside of your, that was almost like the Californians out there. Who are in your top 10
inside
wide
of
receiver?
your top 10.
Get on the chat and get off. And let us know down there because it's going to be a fun time. Love Fred Armisen. Before we get to the news, real quick, this show is sponsored by FQ Media Group. FQ is a media production company specializing in podcast production and empowers others to share their voice with their audience. For more information, check out fqmediagroup.com. And it's been a busy week, Wes, because there is some news to talk about. And by some, I mean enough to fill a dictionary. Run through the news for us for the week because important things to talk about and learn and keep your ears open for. Guys, Wes, what is going on? Tell us why we just got burned right after we uploaded the last episode by Saquon Barkley.
Like literally as we pressed upload, Saquon decided to sign the contract for a 1-year deal with the New York Giants, which completely ruins your running back rankings, which is absolutely hilarious to me. Yeah. Because the whole preface for you was like, oh, he could have been RB6 on my list at one point, but I anticipate he's going to miss several games with this holdout.
And then
like, Saquon watched the episode. He's like, yeah, right. And then just signed the contract.
Saquon's signing his contract. He's going to huh? Yeah.
You don't know me, Noah. All right. So there's a ton of news going on. Some really big news. I'm going to fly through all this here. We're just going to react to the biggest news of this week, which is just recently, as you probably heard, Jonathan Taylor requested a trade from the Indianapolis Colts. So apparently several days ago, he met with the owner, Jim Irsay, to be traded. Now, apparently several days ago, several days ago, he was put on the PUP list. But allegedly, he didn't exactly pass the pre-camp physical. He's actually been speaking about some back pain. Not sure exactly if that's completely related, but it gets a little bit more complicated because the current backup, Zach Moss, yesterday broke his arm in practice. As of now, he's going to be out for 6 weeks, which means that week 1, the backup is going to be Deion Jackson. If Jonathan Taylor, this is where your homework comes in. If Jonathan Taylor is traded before week 1, Deion Jackson will be the starter for the Colts, and then they'll go from there between him and Zach Moss. Quick reaction on this, because you're the one that didn't even put him in your top 10, Noah.
Yeah, I told you guys. I called it. You know, I was outside the top 20. You should have listened. You're welcome. You know, I was right there for you. No, this is huge. And if I'm being honest, if you're not on Twitter, if you jumped over to Threads and you abandoned Twitter, I don't blame you. But there's been like just some drama going on between Jim Irsay and like Jonathan Taylor's agent, and like there's some of that, and just tweets back and forth. It's just, this relationship to me feels completely severed, and I will be shocked if Jonathan Taylor suits up for the Colts this season. Like, I will be very shocked. It just feels like things are too far gone. And Jim Irsay is saying stuff like, if tomorrow I die and Jonathan Taylor's out of the league, no one's gonna remember us. And it's like, are you just saying words? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know what that even means.
So cryptic.
It just feels like this relationship is too far gone now. I'll be very shocked if Jonathan Taylor suits up for the Colts. They've been adamant saying they won't trade him. part of the reason why they maybe put him, quote unquote, on the pup is because if they keep him on the pup, they don't have to pay him his salary this season, and so that it would go to next season, and it's a weird situation. Jonathan Taylor himself, I've heard about this back pain as well. Jonathan Taylor himself tweeted today, like, my back's fine. I don't have back pain. Like, I don't know what people are talking about right now. So it's just
Weird.
it's a very strange situation. It feels like high school football drama, and it's just very strange that this is happening at the NFL level. Like, what's going on here? So, I mean, it's just going to be Deion Jackson. Take your shots now if you're drafting now. It should be interesting. Or Evan Hull, rookie wide receiver or rookie running back, PPR guy. So, I don't know, man. It's going to be crazy.
It's very, very interesting, especially because, hey, football starts this week. The Hall of Fame game is Thursday. So he does not have, which I'm just pumped about that, but he does not have much time to just get a trade right now. So we'll obviously keep an eye on that. All right, here's the rest of the news. We're going to fly through this together. Some more big news from the week. Joe Burrow was carted off the field on Thursday with a calf strain. It's likely he's not even going to miss week 1, even though we just said that week 1's pretty close. But he may miss preseason altogether, as if he was even going to play any preseason. But Zach Taylor confirmed that Burrow will be out for several weeks, but it's still going to be fine. Don't worry about him. Jamar Chase, Bengals offense will be per usual as far as we know. Last bit of big news. So we don't talk about defense much, but unless they're a superstar like Jalen Ramsey, the Dolphins cornerback suffered a knee injury. I think it's a torn ligament, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the deal?
Yeah, his meniscus, yeah.
Ew, terrible. So he's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks of the regular season, not from now. He's going to come back sometime in December, try to help the Dolphins make playoffs. It's going to be a big blow, especially those that draft defenses in your fantasies. Dolphins have a lot of hype for their defense this season, new defensive coordinator. So bit of defensive news there. So in Denver, this is kind of wild. Tim Patrick, their wide receiver, went down on practice Monday with a torn Achilles. This is now the second year in a row he is missing the entire NFL season before it even starts with an injury. Awful. I feel so bad for him. But on top of that, the other wide receiver, KJ Hamler, announced that he is dealing with a heart condition, and the Broncos decided to waive him, and they intend to bring him back. But this puts their rookie wide receiver, Marvin Mims, in position to be a starter for week 1 behind Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. So if you weren't sure what the Broncos receiving room is going to look like and you like Mims, this is a shot for him to try to make an impact. Okay. So in New York, Robert Saleh said that he expects Breece Hall to be ready by week 1, hopefully ready in a couple of weeks after this Thursday's Hall of Fame game against the Browns. He should be good to go. We won't take it at face value, but at least we know that Breece Hall is on track to get off the PUP list pretty soon. So Aaron Rodgers restructured his contract with the Jets. He actually took a bit of a pay cut, which seems strange and not really relevant to fantasy, except for the fact that Dalvin Cook visited the New York Jets Thursday morning. However, he did not even leave with a deal, so we're not sure if that's leverage against other teams. But as of the recording of this episode right now, Dalvin Cook's not on our team. Maybe he pulls a Saquon Barkley, and you already know where he is.
Yeah, but don't worry. By the time this episode drops, he'll be signed to the Jets on a 4-year deal for $80 million. Yeah.
I want that quoted just to see what happens.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Amazing. So also, speaking of running backs visiting AFC East teams, Ezekiel Elliott went to New England on Saturday to visit the Patriots. Again, we don't know where he is, but Zeke's visited the Patriots. Dalvin Cook visited the Jets. We'll see where they finally end up. The New Orleans Saints decided to sign Jimmy Graham back to the team. Yeah, like that Jimmy Graham. Who knows? Honestly, with a graveyard that the tight end position is, I don't know. Maybe we'll take a shot.
Real quick on this, Wes. Are you like me to where when you saw his notification pop up, did you think he was pulling like a sign a 1 day contract to retire as a Saint? Because that was all I saw, and I was like, oh, nice.
For a moment.
Retiring. Wait, what? What? Huh?
That's a why? That's a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
My goodness.
At least it'll be nostalgic for Saints fans and
Yeah.
maybe a little traumatic for NFC South fans. Okay.
Yeah.
Last bit of news here. Here's a list of players around the league that are on a PUP list currently. Jonathan Taylor, Wandale Robinson of the New York Giants, Kyler Murray, Zach Ertz, who's still on the Cardinals, and the Cowboys' new tight end, Luke Schoonmaker. Is that how you say his name? Schoonmaker?
I believe I've heard
Schoonmaker?
Schoonmaker.
Schoonmaker. Their new
Yeah.
tight end, Cowboys tight end, is on a non-football injury list. Here are the players that are off the PUP list: Chase Claypool, Randall Cobb of the Jets, and Sterling Shepard of the Giants. Okay, Kadarius Toney, we talked about him last week. He was trying to field a punt, ended up getting hurt. He's going to have surgery, and we don't know his timeline. So if he even is going to play this season, good luck drafting him. He was a guy I was just trying to get in a lot of leagues. Not anymore. You're too injury prone. Cowboys running back Ronald Jones will be suspended for 2 games this season for violating the PED policy. Obviously, it doesn't affect Tony Pollard, but maybe for 2 games you want a different handcuff. Okay, neat. Josh Jacobs has still not shown up to camp, and the likelihood he holds out has definitely increased with this. Obviously, given what Saquon Barkley just did in New York, that may influence Josh Jacobs in some way. Either way, it may influence him to hold out even more, may have him come back sooner. Right now, he's not at training camp. Justin Herbert got paid big time, 5-year contract, $262 million. He got the money. He's obviously going to stay there for a long time. We already knew that, but it finally happened. You know who also got a big bag? The Bears tight end, Cole Kmet. 4-year extension worth $50 million. Let's go. So in the offseason, just a reminder, they acquired Robert Tonyan from the Packers. This to me means that Cole Kmet's going to be the tight end 1. They're going to pay him $50 million. Justin Fields is going to likely target him the most. Last thing for the news, according to reports in San Francisco, right now the backup quarterback to Brock Purdy is Sam Darnold. And Trey Lance is expected to be the QB3 for San Francisco. That's it. That's what we got going on in the news this week. Let's jump into our top 10 wide receivers for fantasy of the 2023 season.
Let's do it. Listen, if you guys missed last episode, I talked about it already. Top 10 running backs. Lots of controversy here, guys. We had some good conversation here. Head over to social media and check those out. We're on to wide receivers now. Without further ado, Wes, take it away. Let's talk about each of our top 10 wide receivers this season.
I'm going to start with some honorable mentions. We're going to do our wide receiver 13, 12, and 11. And I mean, to be honest, I kind of convinced Noah to do 13 instead of just 12 and 11 because I really wanted to talk about this wide receiver, and it's Marquise Brown. And I love this guy. Yeah. Just a reminder, this is fresh reactions. Noah and I did our best not to look at each other's lists. So Marquise Brown, as I've talked to everyone about, averaging 18 points a game without DeAndre Hopkins. He was wide receiver 6 in that time. I looked it up. He was doing better than Jalen Waddle, Devontae Adams, and A.J. Brown in that time. I don't care how bad you think the Cardinals are going to be. There's no competition for Marquise Brown, and his ADP is honestly disrespectful. I think it's like the 7th round. He is wide receiver 2 for sure. Some weeks he could act as a wide receiver 1. I am very excited. He is truly an honorable mention for me. Now, number 12 and number 11 share a similar reason, and I'm just going to kind of go into it because, yes, technically they're honorable mentions because they're just shy of the top 10, but they actually fall out of last year's top 10. So they don't make the top 10 this year. And the same reason, I think both these offenses are going to be a little bit more conservative. Starting with number 12, CeeDee Lamb. I have said it many times. One of the reasons I love Tony Pollard, Mike McCarthy's going to run the ball more. If you're going to be in the second half and you're going to be ahead, and I think the Cowboys honestly will have the lead for most of the times in the second half. I think they're going to have a good season, especially with that kind of a defense. They're not going to throw the ball. They're going to want to run out the clock.
Sure.
I simply just see this as a byproduct, right? This is just a byproduct of a team that's going to want to run more. That wide receiver is probably not going to have an elite season in fantasy. he's still way too talented to be even that close in the top 15. Like, he's just shy from me. So
Yeah.
CeeDee Lamb is still going to have a great season. I don't really mind his ADP based on my rankings, but I just think because the team is going to run more, be more conservative, it just means that CeeDee Lamb's not going to have quite as great of a season. Number 11. Okay. I don't think Stephon Diggs makes the top 10.
Wow.
And this is, and I've been thinking about this team for a little bit. They honestly are like 3 turnovers away from completely changing the entire playoff picture. Not just the AFC, but the NFC is affected by how Josh Allen turned the ball over. They've got to figure out where this hump is that they can't get to the Super Bowl. Where is it? When you look at that team, honestly, it's Josh Allen's turnovers. He has pretty bad red zone turnover rate. I think they're going to focus on that. I think they're going to want to protect Josh Allen. They're going to want to preserve him for the season. This is all just honestly just speculation. I'm just trying to interpret what I think the Bills are going to approach the season with. I think they're going to want to make sure Josh Allen doesn't put the whole game on his back as he's used to doing, because he'll end up making a mistake. You've got James Cook. You've got Devin Damian Harris. Yeah? No. Devin.
Yep. Yeah.
Which one is it? Damian Harris. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got James Cook and Damian Harris in the backfield. They're both competent running backs. I think they're going to be more conservative as a team. This is my prediction. And similar for the byproduct, I think just Stephon Diggs doesn't get as many targets in the red zone because of it. I think he may not have quite as many big plays. Throw in a little bit of the drama too, and just the sticky situation that he just continues to try to find beef with the Bills. I don't know what's going on, but those are my honorable mentions. What's your first impression on these 3 receivers? Marquise Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I'll comment more on Marquise Brown. I love Marquise Brown. Think he's going to be fantastic. Think that the Cardinals are going to – here's my thing. I think the Cardinals are going to be bad enough that they're going to have to keep throwing the football. And the ball is going to go to somewhere. And I don't think it'll be the Greg Dortch or a 3rd-round rookie wide receiver Michael Wilson. I think Marquise Brown's highest competition for targets is going to be James Conner. And so I like Marquise Brown a lot. I've got him 5 spots back. I've got him at 18. So I do really like him. I still have him as a super solid wide receiver 2, but I don't have him there. I love that. I'll save my main reactions of CeeDee Lamb and Stephon Diggs at 12 and 11, just because I'm going to talk about these guys here on my list as well. But I do have them higher. I'll say that. So I think you and I don't see perfectly. Again, this is 12 and 11. These are still in a 12-man league, a wide receiver 1 for your team.
Yeah.
Like I say we differ, but it's like we're both like, yeah, there's still wide receiver 1s in fantasy.
I still think they're great.
Right. It's just how we see things and see them a little differently. So I'll wait to comment on those because I got some stuff to say on them as well. So, but some some highly honorable mentions, I will say.
Exactly. Thank you for clarifying too, because like 12 and 11 is still really great.
Yeah.
Like if I drafted a running back in the first round and Stephon Diggs fell to me in the second round, I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, boom.
I'm feeling pretty good. I just literally by numbers. That's my rankings. Stuff, okay, share your honorable mentions, and should I do my dishonorable?
I was going to say before I do that, do you want to talk crap a little bit? Because we can go dishonorable if you want.
I think that's smart. Okay,
Let's
so dishonorable.
Let's this is your dishonorable.
A player that I think people want to draft, and they should not draft. And the funniest thing, before we started recording, Noah was like, "Oh, let me double check my dishonorable mentions here, because I got to make sure that I kind of write out a little bit here." And he's going through and he's actually talking out loud, and he's like, "I'm not that high on Terry McLaurin." And he looks and he goes, "The ADP, actually, that's probably where he should be. Nah, I'm not going to do Terry McLaurin." Well, I am. Terry McLaurin was my dishonorable mention. I just want to remind people that Sam Howell, first-year starter, this is also a really, really, really talented receiving core. Maybe Curtis Samuel still has that second resurgence that he had last year, but you have Jahan Dotson and Diami Brown. Plus, on top of that, you've got Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. They've got a lot of offensive weapons here. I think the ball is going to get spread thin just to begin with, but also with a first-year starter, it does not bode well for wide receivers, as I've said many, many times. So even though I think Terry McLaurin is really great, he's not even in my top 30. Just by the end of the season, I don't see him as a top 30 wide receiver. I know he's great, but that's just what happens with a quarterback that's starting for the first time. So that's my dishonorable mention.
And I completely agree. There's a reason why I was saying, he came to mind, and because I was looking at my list and I was going, I'm pretty low on him. I've got him wide receiver 29, and I was like,
look at that.
Everyone loves Terry McLaurin. Surely he's being drafted far higher than that. And then I went and looked, and I was like, oh no, he's being drafted there. So I'm like, okay, well, I mean, like, at least other people seem low on him as well. But I echo what you say. I just, it's the same how. I get the little hype train if you want to have it there, but I'm a bigger fan of Jahan Dotson. I'm a bigger fan of Antonio Gibson if I am picking a Washington Commanders skill player to have on my team. So I'm in agreement with you, Wes. I think Terry McLaurin should not be drafted pretty much unless you are, for some reason, your team is the biggest, or your league is the biggest group of Terry McLaurin haters and you can get him in the 16th round. Take a shot. Go for it, guys.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, take your chance there. Take your chance.
Clearly, I'm very excited to hear your honorable mentions. I almost skipped over my dishonorable mentions, so please finally get...
Yeah, happy to. I'll go through my honorable mentions here, starting at wide receiver 13. I've got Keenan Allen at wide receiver 13. From week 11 on, he was the wide receiver 3 in the league, you guys. I get that they added Quentin Johnston. I think Quentin Johnston has more of a late season kind of surge here, and almost Amon-Ra St. Brown rookie year where he comes into his own and gets some good action going. But I think Keenan Allen is just a safe bet for Justin Herbert to throw the football to, and I believe he will continue to do that. I've got Keenan Allen as wide receiver 13. At wide receiver 12, I've got Chris Olave. I'm a big fan of Chris Olave, as a lot of the fantasy community is right now. Yes. You got to pay a penny to get Olave. I'm bummed that this isn't something that I'm like, hey, here's a secret. Chris Olave is going to be good. No, everybody knows, and they're drafting him as such. So it's a bummer because it's not much of a value. You got to pay for him if you do want him, but I do believe he is a top 12 wide receiver. Derek Carr's last 3 top pass catchers in fantasy football from 2022, 2021, and 2020 finished as wide receiver 3, wide receiver 10, and wide receiver 6. It was actually Darren Waller, but he put up the amount of points to be the wide receiver 6 in fantasy. He's a top 10 wide receiver maker. I've got him just a little bit outside of that because I believe in Michael Thomas's resurgence a little bit more than everybody else. But Chris Olave, top 12 wide receiver there for me at wide receiver 12. And at wide receiver 11, I have Garrett Wilson. Listen, last year, he was the wide receiver 21 with the worst quarterback room in all of mankind. It was terrible. And he was the wide receiver 21. Only scored 4 touchdowns last year. Still had over 1,000 yards. I think his touchdowns go up. Obviously, he has Aaron Rodgers, who is 1 year removed from back-to-back MVP seasons. Listen, he didn't have a lot of weapons last year. He still made do just fine, and he was okay. But I think Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, we've already seen have a good connection there at training camp. Not to overreact, I already had Garrett Wilson. I actually had Garrett Wilson inside my top 10. And I bumped him out because I was doing some moving around. He's just outside my top 10, wide receiver 11. I think he's going to be fantastic. Him and Rodgers are going to be awesome together. Boom. Wide receiver 11 to 13. Some honorable mentions there for me before we jump into the top 10 list.
Those are really good. Chris Olave is my wide receiver 14. So if we had more time to do our honorable mentions, I love the guy. And I was, you were talking to me not too long ago, just through text, about like Chris Olave and Drake London, about these NFC South rookie wide receivers. And I was like, I kind of didn't pay attention to them. So I started watching some highlights and I was like, no disrespect, but I was like, Drake London, I don't really see it. But then I watched Chris Olave and I was like, oh, I see it. Okay,
Yeah,
he is the talented one. He is
it's
going. I
there.
mean, he deserves to be top 15. He will be top 15.
Yeah,
Um, I I'll talk about Garrett Wilson later.
I'm excited for it.
I'll talk about Garrett Wilson later.
I'm excited
Who
for
was
it.
your 12?
12 was Chris Olave, 13 was Keenan Allen.
Oh, that's right, Keenan Allen. Yeah, I similarly what I was saying about uh another player that I already forgot. Oh yeah,
Diggs.
the Commanders.
Oh,
Commanders
Commanders.
with
Sure,
how
sure,
the
sure.
ball gets spread too thin. I
Sure.
think that him and Mike Williams will have an equal amount of targets, and I still got Keenan Allen on my top 20. I think
Yeah.
he's got a good ADP actually.
He's
So
got
I
a
do
great
like him a
ADP.
lot.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if he is borderline top 10 by the end of the season just because of the insane amount of targets and receptions he's
Yeah.
used to getting in a healthy season. Yeah, and obviously, as you'll hear, I like Garrett Wilson. So
Yeah.
good
No, 100%.
three, Noah.
You have segued me a little bit, actually, to my dishonorable mention. Because my dishonorable mention is Drake London, you guys.
About
Guys,
that.
everyone, you guys are drafting Drake London as the wide receiver 15. He is going as the wide receiver. Do you guys not realize that they just drafted Bijan Robinson to an offense that last year ran the ball more than anyone? Like, yes, Drake London's target share was incredible. He was like over 30% or something like that. It's because Marcus Mariota was throwing 11 passes a game. And it's like, cool, he got 4 of them. Nice. Like that was it. Like, it wasn't like a great situation for Drake London. The numbers are a bit deceiving. I'm so out. I don't understand why he's going in the 4th round of fantasy drafts before guys like Marquise Brown. Like, what are we doing here? What's going on? He's my wide receiver 36. I have him 21 spots behind where he's being drafted. He's wide receiver 36. Guys, he was the wide receiver 31 last year. Like, I don't know if I don't know something about Desmond Ridder that you guys seem to know, but guess what? Kyle Pitts is going to be back and healthy, so there's more competition for targets. And it's like, this isn't a situation of like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and then the ball just goes to those 2 guys. Like, there's a bit of a difference here because the offensive scheme you're running heavily favors the run. Don't understand why Drake London is going as the wide receiver 15 in the 4th round. Boo. Boo. Dishonorable. Very dishonorable, you guys. Golly.
I feel like I gave Drake London the benefit of the doubt in my rankings. I put him all the way up to wide receiver. Yeah, well, I put him all the way up to wide receiver 28. Like I also am. I don't. Yeah, like I am so much more kind about it. But I mean, that's hilarious that I actually just dissed Drake London before you're like, oh, hold my beer.
Hold my beer, dude. I got this. Don't worry. I'm baffled to see him going as wide receiver 15. It's pretty nuts here. But
I didn't know that.
All that being, it's crazy. I don't get it. That being said, we're gonna jump into our top 10. Do it a little differently this time. So we're just chatting it up. We're gonna ping pong it back and forth. Wes is gonna start out this wide receiver 10. We're gonna go back and forth here. We're each gonna give you the full list here. So it's gonna be a fun time. Buckle up. Get strapped. There it is. Get strapped in. We're gonna fly here. Wes, tell me who your bottom of the top 10 list. Who's your number 10 wide receiver?
Perfectly put.
Execution. We've been doing this for a year.
Yeah, we have. So to kick off my top 10, wide receiver 10 on my list is A.J. Brown. I want to put him higher, but I mean, honestly, as simply put, I think they're going to be, this sounds dumb. I think, honestly, it just comes down to, I think these other 9 wide receivers just simply do better. And it is because A.J. Brown didn't have nearly as many catches as it seemed like he did. He had a ton of targets, but he was shy of 90 receptions. He's still number 10. He's still going to be great. I still don't mind taking him right there at the 1-2 turn. I've also been on record, so this won't be a surprise that I'm still pretty excited about his coworker, if you will.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was looking through just the rest of the 9 on my list. 5 of these other wide receivers had more receptions, and 3 of them or 2 of them had injuries last year, and then 2 others have a new quarterback. So 9, there it is. All 9 had reasons to have more receptions than A.J. Brown. That's simply it. I love the guy. He's top 10. It's going to be great. That's number 10 for me.
Yeah, I'm a huge A.J. Brown fan. We'll talk a little bit more about it in just a bit because he's also on my list. But yeah, top 10 wide receiver, going to be a fantastic guy. Wide receiver 1 for your fantasy teams. Scoop him up, draft him. I love it.
Perfect. Okay, number 10 on your list.
Number 10 on my list. I think it's time we give the respect that I believe DK Metcalf deserves. I've got him at number 10 on my list. He's been a top 16 wide receiver each of the last 3 years. And last year he was 9th in targets and receptions, the highest of his career. In fact, DK Metcalf led the league in end zone targets last season with 22, but he only scored 6 touchdowns. Now, I went back and found tape of all 22 of those end zone targets. And let me tell you, one of them was thrown by DJ Dallas. So there's one already for you to keep note of there. But I got to say, I would say over half of them were either not catchable or were fantastically defended. They play in a good division with good corners. So it was good defense against those guys. That's 18 targets into the end zone that he did not catch. Even if just a quarter of those end zone targets did connect that hadn't, DK Metcalf would have been in the double-digit touchdowns, would have finished wide receiver 10 last year. I'm in on the bounce-back season for DK in the touchdown department. He kicks off my top 10 wide receivers of 2023. DK Metcalf, wide receiver 10 this year.
Wow, that seems high. Just because Tyler Lockett, I get it. Both can be top 15 because Tyler Lockett defies all odds. But I guess my mentality right now is if the ball is going to get spread too thin because, yeah, they just got Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Kenneth Walker's going to be there, and they also have Zach Charbonnet, and they have some pretty good tight ends as well. That's kind of my point. I don't know if
I add
DK
up. I look at
number 10.
I add up and I look at he was 9th in targets and receptions last year's career high. So he was doing something he previously hadn't. He was getting more targets and catches last year. In the past, they've looked at DK as a deep ball guy maybe or something like that. So he improved in the area of targets and receptions. He's getting open more and he's getting thrown the ball more and he's catching more footballs. And he's leading the league in end zone targets. So I'm going, okay, if he keeps up with this targets and receptions, if this continues, and I know they added JSN, I view the Seahawks run you know how many percentage of snaps the Seahawks' third wide receiver was on the field for last year, which was Marquise Goodwin? Could be because of the name. Could be because it was Marquise Goodwin. It was like 30% of the team snaps. They don't run 3 wide receiver sets. I think JSN was almost more of a preparation for if Tyler Lockett falls off or if JSN starts to perform higher than Tyler Lockett. I'm not worried about JSN and interfering with DK Metcalf as far as losing out on targets, stuff like that. Obviously, it's a great player, stuff like that. But my logic is he improved in an area that he hadn't before. He's getting open. He's getting more targets, more catches. If the touchdowns go up and he keeps those targets and catches going up as well in that department, I think he lands top 10. I think he's at worst like a wide receiver 18 or something like that. And I do think I'm ranking him at his ceiling. I'm thinking he has his best season that he can have. And so it's wide receiver 10 for me on this list.
You came prepared. I took a shot and you swung back with some great numbers,
baby. Boom.
That was solid. Yeah, I will agree with you, and I think we can find common ground that I think that's his ceiling. But I think he is right there he's for sure top 20. But I think he's I actually have him as number 20 because as I just said, I think he's spread too thin. I don't think he's a bad pick, but those are all my reasons. Okay, so number 9 on my list, wide receiver 9, Devontae Adams. So, oh, you're smiling. I like where this is going.
I'm ready. I'm ready to hear it.
So, since 2018, aside from 1 year when he suffered from turf toe and had an injury that took him out for half the season, since 2018, Davante Adams has been top 3 for every year. And that includes Derek Carr last year. Aaron Rodgers, 2018, 19, 20, 21, and then last year, Derek Carr. What do they have in common? They all threw the ball, both of them, threw the ball 550 times. Jimmy Garoppolo barely throws it 400 times.
Yeah.
Just by volume. I'm not even trying to call the shot that Jimmy Garoppolo sucks or is worse than Derek Carr and obviously Aaron Rodgers. I'm not even pulling that card. I'm literally looking at the numbers, the volume, the lack of volume Davante Adams is going to get. It's why he doesn't even make top 5, let alone top 3 for the first time since basically 2018. But he's still really good. He's still really good. So he still squeaks into my top 10. So that's why I have him there as number 9.
Yeah, I love it. And I actually love it so much because as my wide receiver 9, I've got Davante Adams as my wide receiver 9.
Fourth and troll double down.
Fourth and troll double down, baby. Yeah. No, I'm with you for a lot of the same reasons. 3 years in a row now, top 3 wide receiver for Davante Adams. Yes, he's wide receiver 9. It's less about him regressing, more about who his quarterback is. And I just think the guys ahead of him on my list are just going to be a little better. And regardless, still top 10. Hasn't seen less than a 30% target share since 2018. He had 180 targets last year. Again, Garoppolo won't do that, but that was the 11th most in NFL history, and he was 30 years old. Like, he's still got it. The touchdowns that he had, you would look and go, how's there no one within 15 yards of this dude? Like, what's going on here? Like, what's happening? Wide open. That walk-off touchdown against the Broncos, I was like, who blew the coverage there? Like, what's up? And then his quote was like, about Pat Surtain II. He was like, he's good, but he's not him yet, or he's not there yet, or whatever it was. Hey, maybe he's right, because Davante Adams, old behind, blew past him. Listen, my one thing with Jimmy Garoppolo is he's played in an offense where they have looked at him and said, get your best weapons the ball. And he's done it successfully. He went to the Super Bowl with the 49ers, and, we got guys there. Granted, great defense, but still, he can get the football into his guys' hands. Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow don't scare me, and Darren Waller's in New York now, playing for Daniel Jones. So, add to all of this, I'll say last thing, add to all of this, at the other top playmaker on the roster, Josh Jacobs, is probably going to be holding out here. So,
yeah,
I think he's in a prime position to have another top 10 season, and I freaking love it, Wes. Fourth and troll, double down, fighting and trying.
Dude, I love you. I love you, Noah.
I love you too, dude. Hit me with the wide receiver 8. Let's go.
Jalen Waddle, Miami Dolphins, superstar, the Penguin in South Beach, Miami. I understand how frustrating he was. He was incredibly frustrating to play because he had weeks where he was not even getting 10 points. And then other weeks it was like, well, that was an easy 30-point game for him. So I do think actually, like, by the end of the season, just like last year, he ends up in the top 10 just by actually calculating his final score, and there he is. But I also believe this is a safer floor and less of a boom-bust risk for him this year, because this is year 3, and year 3 wide receivers are incredible. And this is also Tua's 4th year, and that's a great year for maturity for quarterbacks to just continue to be great. And obviously, I mean, these are rankings with all these quarterbacks playing all year long, and Tua's not any more risk than anyone else. So I expect Tua to play all season. And even with Tyreek Hill, I think Jalen Waddle is still right there. He's got a much safer floor. And I mean, we can be 100% honest. Everyone, I think, can agree that Jalen Waddle's ceiling is as good as my wide receiver 1's ceiling, and is as good as your wide receiver 1's ceiling, and anyone else's. Just think about your number 1 wide receiver on your rankings, and Jalen Waddle has the same ceiling. He's wide receiver 8 for very good reason on my list.
Yeah, I fully agree, Wes. I think he's going to be fantastic. And I think you stole my notes, because my wide receiver 8 is Jalen Waddle for the Miami Dolphins. Back to back, 4th and troll, double downs. Let's go, dude. I'm stoked. I'm hyped. Same exact reasons here. Listen, hot and cold, but it followed a pattern last year. It followed a pattern. In games without Tua, Waddle averaged under 10 points per game. But with Tua, averaged over 15 points per game. In the new scheme with McDaniel, he doubled his yards per catch. Over 18 yards per catch last year, top in the NFL from his rookie year when he was that big. He set the rookie reception record. He was at 9 yards per catch then. His play style has changed. He's got this explosive play potential on display here. It is high, and we knew it was there year one, but with McDaniel, he has unlocked it. He only had 8 red zone targets last year, but he still finishes the wide receiver at 8. And even the craziest part of this is that he only played over 80% of snaps in a game just 3 times. He only played over 80% of the snaps 3 times this past season. Should that snap share rise up a little bit? I think there's a genuine chance, and Wes, you just hit it. Jalen Waddle has a top 5 wide receiver ceiling with week winning upside each week. And I said top 5 to be cautious. He could very well be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy this year, depending on how things go. So Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 8. This is the best fantasy football podcast in the world.
That is amazing. Back to back, 4th and troll double downs. And I mean, I love that you have slightly different reasons too. Like you just add on to, like we're adding to each other's reasons.
Flux of knowledge and reasoning, but both of us give.
Beautiful.
Gosh, guys, subscribe and ring that bell because, man,
this is just share it.
Share, make Teddy the Troll smile, man, because this is awesome.
Yes. Gosh. Fantastic.
Go with wide receiver 7 here. Let's run with it.
I know for certain that we do not share this one.
I do too.
Okay. Oh, great. Okay. Because my wide receiver 7 is Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
Similar to what you're saying, I do believe in him. And you believe in him too. I'm not saying you don't. You believe in him too. I think he's going to end up as wide receiver 7 because, just as you said, he had 1,100 yards and 4 touchdowns with the worst quarterback situation in football last year.
Yeah.
And literally any other quarterback in the NFL, I think, would improve his stats. And he would end up pretty much top 15 with any other quarterback. But he gets Aaron Rodgers, and he then is wide receiver 7 for me, especially because we know how important relationships are to Aaron Rodgers and chemistry and going to his guy. That's why Devontae Adams ended up where he is. It's why nobody did well in Green Bay, because he didn't have his guy. We got a little bit with Christian Watson. Honestly, there's no other wide receiver that I'm even worried about. There's no other pass catcher for the Jets that I think poses that kind of a threat. I think Breece Hall has good PPR upside the same way that Aaron Jones did in fantasy. Garrett Wilson is going to have a fantastic year. I am on the higher expectation for Garrett Wilson. That's why he's wide receiver 7 for me.
I've had him close to this mark. I believe I've had him as high as wide receiver 8 in my rankings to start the year. And it truly, he's dropped out of it now. I've got him there as my wide receiver 11. And it's, listen, 4 spots off here, but all the same reasoning. I just see some of these guys being a little bit better. Love Garrett Wilson. Think he's a fantastic pick in your fantasy drafts. Think he's going to be very, very good with Aaron Rodgers. My one thing I'll say is you nailed it on the head, Wes. Relationships are so important to Aaron Rodgers, and it felt like he brought his entire lunch table from middle school with him to the Jets whenever he came, because Allen Lazard is there, Randall Cobb is there. Listen, Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the most talented player in the football as much as he can, but also not that he's going to play favorites, but I do think we'll just see some more work in the direction of Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb in the slot if he ends up there. But listen, we're only 4 spots off here. Garrett Wilson is wide receiver 7. I fully could see it. I think maybe that's where I have him as maybe a ceiling play. Maybe he could be a top 5. His ceiling could be Devontae Adams' production. So you never know where he's going to end up at, but I think he's a fantastic wide receiver 7 this year, and I love it. I think he's a great player.
Amazing. Okay, so we already know that we both have different players for wide receiver 7. Who
Yes.
is your 7th best receiver?
My wide receiver 7 this year is CeeDee Lamb. And although I'm not a Dak Prescott believer, I am still a big fan of CeeDee Lamb. He saw 156 targets last year. That was 4th in the NFL. He was the wide receiver 5. Kellen Moore is no longer there, so the scheme might be a little bit different, but Dak Prescott's ultimate safety net and Dalton Schultz also isn't there. So I think we're going to be able to see and say safely that CeeDee Lamb will see another 150 plus targets this year, is what I'm predicting here. Dalton Schultz had 5 touchdowns in the red zone last year. I expect a few of those to go CeeDee Lamb's way instead. I'm not super threatened by Michael Gallup or the signing of Brandon Cooks. Like, I don't think it's going to be anything super special or impede on his value. Wide receiver 7, he's a super solid wide receiver 1 in my books and in my eyes. And if you're at the 1-2 turn and you have an opportunity to get CeeDee Lamb even as a wide receiver 2, my goodness, you are in a fantastic spot. So I like CeeDee Lamb a lot this year. He's my wide receiver 7.
Yeah, I'm not against. I think I would put it this way. I'm erring on the side of caution with this rushing attack for the Cowboys. But and I think
and that part scares me too, to be honest. Like I think you having him at 12 is not a bad ranking. Tony Pollard is an animal. We both have him top 10. Like he is a freaking beast. So when you hear a coach say we're going to run the football more, like Mike McCarthy's been saying, I understand. I don't fault you at all and think you have him in you're way too low on CeeDee Lamb. He's your back end wide receiver 1. Like, I'm not saying that at all. I just have a little higher because although Mike McCarthy is saying they're going to run the football more, the depth chart fails to confirm that because it's Ronald Jones and Malik Davis behind Tony Pollard. And Tony Pollard has never been a 25-touch player. So I think they're going to keep on throwing the football. I think they're going to let Dak throw the ball. I think Dak is motivated to have a better year this year. And so that's where I'm at here with CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, it's probably more likely that he falls between where our rankings are, but
I believe so.
Just a reminder, I'm not out on CeeDee Lamb. I am being probably a little too cautious. But also, you saw where I ranked Tony Pollard. I've got him as running back too. Like, I'm stoked about that guy. So it just makes sense that I'm a little less interested in the receiver. But
neither of us seeing CeeDee Lamb is going to suck. He's going to be fantastic. Yeah, he's going to be great.
Yeah, still draft CeeDee. And
we're probably
just finish with
you're
this.
Right. We probably are at ceiling and floor, probably with CeeDee Lamb.
He's somewhere in this range. But I also just a final point on CeeDee is I'm not worried about any of the other wide receivers. So obviously he is the primary target. So he'll do great.
Yeah, totally. Hit us with wide receiver 6, Wes. We're about to break into the top 5 here.
I'm going to talk about that coworker of AJ Brown's. Good old Slim Reaper.
Oh my goodness.
Smith. Okay, so you see how I calmed down a little bit from wide receiver 3 from the initial gut reaction rankings. I got him as 6. I might be alone on this. I might have him the highest of anybody else's wide receiver rankings. But there's a little bit of math and there's also a little bit of faith. I believe in wide receiver in year 3 for wide receivers. And when they're superstars, they have incredible year 3s. And he is a superstar. I also see what he did in the playoffs. One of those catches in the playoff run may or may not have actually been a catch, but he was a crucial part in getting them to the Super Bowl. And he was integral in the Super Bowl game itself. So he has proven that he is part of this offense. He is not like Jalen Waddle is behind Tyreek Hill. But I would not say with full confidence that Devonta Smith is behind A.J. Brown in the pecking order. I'm looking at Garrett Wilson's name. I had it hovered over my cursor. A.J. Brown had 146 targets, but he had 88 catches. Devonta Smith had 136 targets, fewer, but 95 catches. If you give him more targets, he's going to have more catches. He's going to get past 100 receptions. He had just 4 yards shy of 1,200 yards last season. He had 7 touchdowns. I think it's just going to be even more. I think it's just going to be even more. And I think A.J. Brown scared the crap out of enough people that they're going to want to cover him more. Devonta Smith, I really do believe he can be anybody's wide receiver one on their rosters, and they'll be quite happy with that. So, yeah, I'm going to say it. He's wide receiver 6 on the season.
I love it. And I love it so much. I love that we are calling our shot here, each of us in our own way. You'll notice I didn't say I agree. I'm not. I don't have him in my top 10. I haven't discussed him yet, obviously, and I won't for the rest of this episode. But I've got him as my wide receiver 16. I've got him as a fantastic wide receiver 2 for your team. And I just think some of these other guys are going to outperform. I will agree with you. I believe it will happen again. I believe that Devonta Smith will finish with more targets than A.J. Brown and probably more catches. They play different games. So I totally get it. Obviously, you have A.J. Brown, who's a very large human being and very athletic and jump up there for the ball. Devonta Smith can get up there as well, but he's not as big, so it's probably not as many deep shots unless he's got getting past there with the speed. I think Devonta Smith is going to be fantastic, and I'm so glad you have him inside your top 10 because I cannot wait to see the comments this week on everybody talking to you and you getting to talk back.
One question.
Yeah.
Devonta Smith was wide receiver 9 last year. Do you think he actually drops? Do you have him dropping 7 spots?
So at least one because Cooper Kupp was hurt.
And Jamar Chase was not in top 10.
Yeah, Keenan Allen was hurt. I think Chris Olave does better. Yeah, he may jump up a little bit. I was actually, as you were talking about him, I pulled up in my rankings on him. I've got him. I'd probably move one guy below him, maybe. So I might have him as my wide receiver 15 by the time we get through this. I just think he was in a bit of a better situation. The wide receivers last year were missing a lot of the people. Not a lot, but a handful of players that may have ended up doing better had they played for the full season. So not a dig on Smith at all. I still think he's fantastic. I think he's going to have a ton of catches. I think his PPR value is incredible. I think I'll talk about what I think the passing game for Philly is going to look like in just a little bit here. But I love it. And I am so glad we're on record talking about this because I think it's going to be great.
All right. With that, let's get into your wide receiver 6 just before the top 5.
Yep. So my wide receiver 6, Stephon Diggs, coming off a top 5 season last year. The only reason I've got him outside of it is because I buy into the Dalton Kincaid hype a little bit from an NFL standpoint, not a fantasy standpoint, just an NFL standpoint. I think they drafted him for a reason. They're going to use him. Diggs has been a top 7 wide receiver since he went to Buffalo, and he's being drafted like that. I'm just behind consensus. Really because I just think maybe he doesn't get to the double-digit touchdowns again. While he was second in end zone targets behind DK Metcalf, I don't think it's that double-digit touchdowns. And Wes, you touched on it actually, because I think they're going to play it a little more safe in the red zone here. I think this team has seen, man, we can follow these games here, and we really need to be careful with this. I remember the Minnesota Vikings forcing a fumble on Josh Allen in what was an unbelievable come-from-behind victory for the Vikings. And I did not like praising the Vikings last year, so I will talk about that's very clear for me. But I just don't think he gets the double-digit touchdowns. I think, however, Diggs has made his message very clear on how important it is for him to get the football. And I think it's just going to be a target monster. I think he's going to have a ton of receptions, and I think he's still going to be borderline top 5. So I got Diggs at 6.
I guess technically I disagree with you, but I have no problem with him being. If he was top 5, I think I would I feel like that's a little high.
I'd be
Not
surprised.
That 6
I
is
think
any better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's interesting that we both have the same expectation for the Bills offense, that they're going to be more conservative. They're going to be a little more safer, that they're going to go for a field goal more often. They're going to be willing to punt.
And I don't know if it's subconsciously we both thought this, but I think they're going to have to be more technical in how they win football games this year. The AFC East is going to be tough. And I think they're going to have to be more technical, and less, oh, Josh Allen's running around like he's in the schoolyard and having fun. I think it's going to be a more technical approach. I think there's a reason they brought in like a goal-to-go runner and Damian Harris. I think there's a reason why they paid Josh Allen a lot of money, and I think for that reason they're going to want to keep him more protected. So I love Diggs. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's going to get a ton of targets. I've got him as wide receiver 6 for that reason. So that being said, let's go break into the top 5 here as we reach some fun names to talk about here. Wes, who's wide receiver 5?
Oh, yeah. So the start of my top 5 list is the redemption of Cooper Kupp. I've got him back in the top 5. And if your list is anything like the last time we talked about wide receivers, I think it's still going to be some time before we hear you mention Kupp's name, but I think Kupp is going to be great. I think he's going to look very much, as far as fantasy goes at least, very much like his 2021 season. Even how he was doing last year before his injury, he was still incredible. He was still one of the best players in fantasy when it came to points per game. In fact, by best player, I literally mean the best player. He was literally the wide receiver that had the most points per game, 22.4. So, yeah, the only reason he's not higher, as if top 5 isn't good enough, the only reason he's not higher is I don't think the Rams are going to be as good. I don't know if Stafford's going to be quite as, it's not going to be quite a romantic fairy tale as the 2021 season. But in the end, Cooper Kupp is back in the top 5. And I don't see it as a risk. I don't even see it as a risk as drafted him because of the injury. Have fun taking Cooper Kupp if you want him.
Yeah.
Number 5.
I love that smart fantasy analysts like you, Wes, are thinking like this and still praising him as a top 5 wide receiver, but having him at 5 because I'll get to talk about Cooper Kupp in a little bit, but for all the reasons you've said, I'm excited to talk about him. I'll leave it at that. We'll talk about him more in a little bit here. My wide receiver 5 this year in fantasy football is AJ Brown. Just talked about his teammate Devontae Smith. AJ Brown's one of my favorite picks in fantasy this year. He's coming off a career year and showed us that he can be explosive and have week winning performances. I felt that personally because that game against the Steelers was the same week that I was feeling high and mighty because I had DeAndre Hopkins against the Vikings having a great week, and then AJ Brown just came in and dropped 3 touchdowns on my head, and I was like, wow, this sucks. He can win you weeks in fantasy football. He had his 4th season in a row above 2 yards. Again, I'm going to bring this up again, per route run. That metric there that I like looking at. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he has big play ability. He had 13 yards was his average depth of target last year. It's pretty big. It's a pretty big average depth of target there. When he gets the football, it is down the field, and that is good for fantasy football. I'm expecting the Philly offense to be more pass heavy, with their star quarterback Jalen Hurts receiving a massive contract this offseason, and really no huge names that get you excited in the running back room. Passing offense is full of weapons. Don't get me wrong. All these guys are going to thrive and be great top 10, in my eyes, maybe top 5 players at their position when it comes to A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert. But I've got A.J. Brown leading the wide receiver room in fantasy points again this year. It's like when we talked about last season, Wes. We talked about who would you have the most exposure of from a team on your fantasy team. Who do you want the most players from? For me, it's the Eagles this year, and it's sad that I can't take all of them because when I'm mock drafting, I love getting AJ Brown. Then we come around to Devontae Smith, and I go, dang it! I can't take him there. So it's disappointing, but I do love him. AJ Brown's my wide receiver 5.
I think he's great. I think 9 other receivers are going to do better than him, but I don't have any issues with people taking A.J. Brown as their wide receiver 1. He's still, right now, is he still first round in ADPs, or is he at the turn? He's going at
the 1-2 turn. So I've seen him go 10th. I've seen him go. I've seen him go at the 110. I've seen him go at the 204.
Yeah, I don't
Around there.
think
I've seen him go earlier than that as well. I've seen him go at like the 1819. So he's around that turn.
I don't see anybody really reaching on AJ Brown. I think he just kind of falls into your pick, and I think you just take him.
Yeah.
I think so. My top 5, and I think your top 5 as well, I think have a good case to be picked in the first 3 overall. Like these are the players that you intend to take based on their ADP.
Yeah.
With that being said,
100%.
Oh boy, wide receiver 4 on my list. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh yeah, baby.
Wait. Huh?
Okay.
So go. Yeah, this is wow.
Yeah. Let's start with the fact that he was wide receiver 7 last year. Okay. He had a fantastic season, and I don't think we even really paid attention to it. I think we thought he did well and he was successful, but no, there he is, wide receiver 7. He had 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns. There's not going to be Jameson Williams for the first half of the season. There's not going to be TJ Hawkinson anymore. And yeah, Sam Laporta, sure, I guess, maybe. And yes, I do believe Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be part of the PPR game. But if he is going to be wide receiver 7 without any competition for half the season, and he is a very talented receiver, and I've got faith in these year 3 wide receivers, I think amon-ra St. Brown is going to be one of the best values, even though he's in the middle of the second round. I think you get any of these other wide receivers that we're about to list and amon-ra St. Brown, I think you are in phenomenal shape, and I believe in him. I really think Amon-Ra is going to be a dominant player in fantasy, absolutely can be your wide receiver 1, and if he has 6 touchdowns with all that competition, there's no competition in the passing game without Jameson Williams for half the season and no more TJ Hawkinson. 6 touchdowns, I expect that to go up. And even if his yards are the same, we're looking at someone that is going to be top 5. He's number 4 for me.
I don't know if my reaction is just because it's not as sexy of a name to take as some of these other guys. And that very well could be it. That very well could be it. I've got him outside my top 13, as I've talked about. I believe I have him at 14 or 15. I think he's going to be so good. I think I see, man, I mean, 4 is high, but I don't like, it's
high.
I don't know if I'm blocking out, last year, part of the way, anything like that.
Exactly.
But it is.
He doesn't seem like a superstar.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know, man. I think I'm looking at who I have it for, and I'm like, whoa. Okay, those guys are, but maybe they are comparable. I mean, I think the production level. I think Jared Goff is a fine quarterback. I think there's not much competition besides Jahmyr Gibbs in my eyes for amon-ra St. Brown. I probably should have him a little higher, but I 4 is high, and I thought your boldest take in my eyes was going to be Devontae Smith, and maybe it still is. But I got to think about this list now, man. You're right. I did not see that coming. I believe my quote was, huh.
So, you went back like in a superhero film. You went through the wall.
Yeah, I had to take a moment.
This is awesome. I'm very excited. Let us know in the comments. Are you sleeping on amon-ra St. Brown, or do you think he's overhyped? Let us know, because he finished wide receiver 7 last year. I think this is going to be an even better year. With that, Noah, tell us your wide receiver 4 for the season.
My wide receiver 4 is Ja'Marr Chase. Listen, I was in the hospital for 5 days when I was in 8th grade because I had a brain bleed. And if I'm being honest, ranking my wide receiver 2 through 4 was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. No word of a lie here, guys. Listen, it was tough. And I've got Ja'Marr Chase as my wide receiver 4. The biggest factor for me, for these guys 2 through 4, was who has the biggest competition for targets between the 3 of these guys. Ja'Marr Chase is competing for targets with T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, and Tyler Boyd. And that's really my only knock on him. He could be wide receiver 3, 2. He could be wide receiver 1. He's got the capability. He's insanely talented, well worthy of being a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy. He missed 4 games last year, and he was still the wide receiver 12. If you want to take him 101, I would not blame you at all. He has the ability. He has the explosiveness. He's got the college connection with Joe Burrow. He's going to be a fantastic guy. He's a top 4 wide receiver for me. Ja'Marr Chase is my wide receiver 4.
We're about to get into the nitpicky of these last 3 wide receivers, starting with what you said about Ja'Marr Chase. Like, for you personally, you just think the next 3 are the 3, like literally the 3 greatest wide receivers in fantasy this season. And there's no reason to not believe in Ja'Marr Chase. You just, technically, you think there are 3 more. I'm still waiting to talk about Ja'Marr Chase, because for me, I do have him even higher. I know there's only 3 other receivers left, but it's all just going to come down to very specific reasons for the last. I understand like trying to figure out. I went back and forth on 2 and 3 many times. So I'll tell you where I land with number 3. Please don't attack me, but I actually have Justin Jefferson as number 3. And it really just comes down to, I think number 2 and number 1 are just going to do better. I think they're just going to do better. Do not hear me say that don't take JJ number 1 overall. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I've done mock drafts where I've taken Justin Jefferson, even though the next 2 are available. I love the guy. I believe in the next 2 wide receivers, I think, are just this much better. So I have to wait to talk about why JJ falls to 3, because I got to talk about why I think 2 is going to be 2 and why 1 is number 1.
Right. No, I completely understand, Wes, because for the 3rd time in this episode, we have a 4th and troll double down. I have Justin Jefferson as my wide receiver 3 for this season. The only reason, again, same for Ja'Marr Chase, only reason is wide receiver 3 is due to competition for targets. I am a huge Jordan Addison truther. I've got him as a top 20 receiver this year, and I think the split for work is going to be larger than people think, because CeeDee Lamb, why are you talking about CeeDee Lamb, Noah? He's on the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb, elite fantasy wide receiver, gets a ton of work. CeeDee Lamb ran 570 routes last season. Elite workload for him. He's on the field a ton. He's getting a ton of work, a ton of opportunities. Adam Thielen ran 614. 44 more routes than CeeDee Lamb did. Adam Thielen, old man Adam Thielen, wide receiver 2 for the Minnesota Vikings, ran 614 routes last year. Jordan Addison is going to garner more targets than Adam Thielen did on those 614 routes. Add TJ Hawkinson to the mix, who I'm not a believer in at his ADP, but he is still very talented. Add TJ Hawkinson, add Alexander Mattison to the mix, who is their offensive coordinator has come out and said that he believes Alexander Mattison can be a 3-down back and has confidence in Alexander Mattison as a 3-down back. He'll be out there for all of those situations. I just have Justin Jefferson not having that wide receiver 1 season this year that people are banking on and expecting. It's easy to bank on it. It's easy to expect it. For 4th and troll, he's our wide receiver 3. And that's fun and exciting because, boom, double down, get some more information thrown at you.
Double down.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 3. Wes, we're at the top 2. Take me there.
There's no disappointment. I was going to say, there's no disappointment in Justin Jefferson finishing the wide receiver 3 instead of wide receiver 1. Like, there's no disappointment. But I don't have him higher because number 2 is the cheetah, Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
I am going to take his word at face value. Him trying to push for 2,000 receiving yards in a season. I do believe he will have the most receiving yards in the NFL this season. And I also believe he's going to have a heck of a lot of touchdowns, and he got a surprising amount of targets, even with Jalen Waddle there. He had 170 targets, even with Jalen Waddle on that team. He had 7 touchdowns. I think we're looking at one of the most impressive seasons for a wide receiver. He's not number 1, but he's number 2. And dang, he's going to be so good, especially with a healthy Tua.
Yeah, he's going to be fantastic, especially with Tua there. And man, for the 4th time this episode, it is a 4th and troll
baby.
double down. Tyreek Hill is my wide receiver 2 as well. He led the league in yards per route run, along with deep ball targets and receptions last year. He's confident and ready to shock the world. He is on record talking about what the Dolphins are going to do this season, and people are going to be shocked. He's got Tua. He's got Waddle running routes next to him. He's saying he's going over 2,000 yards, and I believe him. He finishes the wide receiver 2 last season, despite being without Tua for 5 games. He was a top 15 weekly wide receiver on 7 different occasions last year. And 6 of those 7 occasions, he was a top 8 fantasy wide receiver. He's a week winner that's going to have your opponents shaking in their boots every time they look at your lineup. I love Tyreek Hill this year. I love the Cheetah, wide receiver 2 for 4th and Troll Fantasy.
Amazing. How about that?
Love it.
4 times.
Yes. 4
It was
times,
so much
dude.
fun.
I wondered if you looked at my notes, man, but it was just in sync. I love
I
it.
really did it.
No, I
This is
know
incredible.
it, dude. Wes, take us there for wide receiver 1 and tell us why. It's going to be Treylon Burks, of course, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not even scared about DeAndre Hopkins. It's Treylon Burks, obviously.
Exactly.
No, it's going to be Jamar Chase, wide receiver 1. That never changed for me when I first started this list, but I started to quantify my expectations for him. And I'd like to just share what I think he's actually going to do. Because first, as we've already mentioned a few times this episode, actually, he missed 5 games, and he was still wide receiver 11. And he was 4th in touchdowns. He missed 5 games, so was still 4th in touchdowns. I anticipate that he's going to have 120 plus catches. I anticipate he's going to have over 1,700 yards. And I think he's going to have over 15 touchdowns.
Wow.
And he's going to be wide receiver 1 on the season. And I think he is going to be this season's biggest bully in fantasy football. It will make people so upset to go against Jamar Chase. They will actually be upset at the person they're playing against simply because they have Jamar Chase. Wide receiver 1 on the season for me.
Bold claims there, calling out the stats. But I love it. I do. Jamar Chase, 4 or 1. He as I said, if you want to take him 101, I do not blame you. Like, he is a fantastic player. He's very, very good. And I hope, I'm so glad you called the shot on the stats, because I cannot wait to see how close you are on that, because it's going to be very exciting. Jamar Chase cannot fault you for having him as your wide receiver 1.
Yeah. I didn't mark my words, so it's just going to be a little. We'll have to just remember it later on.
No, I know. We'll just take a look. We'll keep it locked in.
Yeah, little tack there. All right,
that's 100. That's averaging 100 yards per game. Lock it in, dude.
Yeah,
I'm hyped.
Yeah,
I cannot wait,
dude,
and I hope you're right.
Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill averaged over 100 yards a game.
Yeah. Why can't Jamar Chase? We'll have to wait. We'll have to see. I'm excited. Yeah. I can't wait.
Yeah. All right. Close out the show. Reveal the greatest wide receiver in fantasy this season.
He's given me no reason to think otherwise. It's Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is the wide receiver 1 in fantasy this year. I'll tell you why. He finished as the wide receiver 24, and he played 9 games. 9 games, guys. He finishes the wide receiver 24. Oh, yeah, that stat that I mentioned, just to go back, about Tyreek Hill being a top 15 wide receiver 7 times last year. Yeah, Cooper Kupp had 7 weeks like that in 8 games. In 6 of those weeks, he was a top 8 wide receiver. We all saw him achieve the Triple Crown in 2021 and thought he could never do something like that again. And then he was on pace to do even better last season before injury took him out for the rest of the year. He was running it back with his BFF, Matthew Stafford, and a far worse defense than they had last year. I expect this offense to have to score a lot to win games, and their best chance to do that is with Cooper Kupp catching a lot of passes. And until he proves to me that he has fallen off skill-wise, Cooper Kupp's going to be my wide receiver 1 for all the days to come. Cooper Kupp, my fantasy wide receiver 1 this season, and he's going like in the middle of the first round or late first round, and it's freaking awesome because it's just, guys, take the value. It's incredible. Cooper Kupp, wide receiver 1, if the Rams want to have any chance at winning football games.
I will be pleasantly surprised if he is the wide receiver 1. I just said he's wide receiver 5. Like, I think he's going to be great. It will bring me so much joy, put a smile on my face if he is right back where he was. Just right back. What a great episode.
It's that
I think we have a
Bessie
pretty
syndrome,
solid
man.
list.
It was a great episode. Listen, 4th and Troll, double downs all over the place. Great episode. It's very exciting. That is going to do it, though. Let us know what you think of our list. Is Cooper Kupp back? Top 5? Is he wide receiver 1? Do you have someone other than Justin Jefferson as your wide receiver 1 like we do? Let us know in the comments. Remember to follow us on social media as well. Those are all listed below so you can see the rankings on there. Make Tuddy the Troll smile by hitting the subscribe button, leaving us a like, and ringing that bell. And be sure to check us out on our socials, of course, as they're going to be talking about all the camp news. Follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all that sort of stuff. Don't forget the Hall of Fame game is in 2 days. If you want to watch Zach Wilson play football, which it might be the worst viewership of a Hall of Fame game ever because Aaron Rodgers will not be in our center. Join us next Tuesday. We got some more rankings coming for you guys. I'm Noah Selby.
And I'm Wes Selby.
And this has been 4th and Troll Fantasy. 4th and Troll Fantasy is a production of Selby Artistic Workshop.